Welcome to the Leedz Edutainment Podcast, featuring in-depth interviews with people in hip-hop culture, based out of New England. Leeds. All right, we got it going.
Let's go.
I can't tell you how many times we've started. It's been the same scenario.
Oh, yeah, same shit. Yeah.
It's always something with Zoom. How's things, brother?
Good, man. Good. Crazy. Life is crazy, but life is good. It's
Yeah.
it's a balance of the madness and just trying to see past all that and see the good.
What kind of madness you got going on right now?
Oh my goodness. My kids. I got my kids a majority of the time. I got the music, the real estate, everything like that. Revitalizing my whole career and the way I've done everything and changing up everything in my music career, then the insanity of real estate with a spring market, you know what I'm saying? Having a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, just craziness.
Oh, it's crazy. I definitely want to get into some of this more, but I always start from the beginning, right? Start
Right.
from the beginning. And first off, I'd like to say welcome everybody to the Leeds Edutainment Podcast. We got a very special guest, rapper, producer, real estate agent, Mr. Apathy. Thanks for coming.
Dad.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of roles you have, but
Right.
but thanks for making time. I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, you've been a good friend of mine for a long time, man. So that's no question.
Yeah. Connecticut, born and raised.
Connecticut born and raised, man.
What's that like?
Um, that's an interesting question, man. Like, there's a definite reason why I've always, gravitated to here and come back to here, even after living in New York and living in LA. My heart is here. I love Connecticut. I grew up in a very, a pretty economically destitute area of Connecticut. That's a lot of blue collar. And, I come from the part of Connecticut where there's a lot of a lot of families, old families who worked at mill jobs or textile mill jobs, and a lot of blue collar, hardworking people who, sometimes things didn't always go great for. And then there's city elements to Connecticut that a lot of people don't know about too. Growing up in Connecticut, it's different. There's a song, an old song that I have where I say, I'm from places where blacks live a block from the racists. You could go from hood to woods at 20 paces. So that's an exact representation of how things are here. It's a real interesting dynamic. It's very New England. There's areas that are super hood, areas that are super wood, and everything in between. So it's a real interesting dynamic here. It's in close proximity and sandwiched in between New York and Boston. Then you got Providence, Rhode Island, very close. So growing up, even as teenagers, we spent a lot of time in Boston and New York. And that's kind of where we grew up as well. Because Connecticut isn't as metropolitan as those areas, we spent a lot of time going to those areas for things to do.
I feel like, what is Connecticut known for other than driving through? Because like for people outside of Connecticut,
Sure.
I when I try to describe what Connecticut is and what's going on there, the biggest thing that comes up is pizza.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Connecticut.
Is
Yeah,
pizza
Frank
state? Is that
Tiffany,
officially?
Sally's. Yeah,
Officially
pizza.
pizza state?
Absolutely. And I'm pretty sure we gave birth to the submarine sandwich. There's documentaries
Wow.
about it on YouTube. And then
Wow, that's big.
yeah, also Louis' Lunch in New Haven is supposedly the home of the cheeseburger, the burger, the hamburger.
Wow.
And that's Louis' Lunch in New Haven. I have no affiliation with them, by the way. I'm just saying
Sponsor
historically,
plug.
and then Connecticut as well. You have Yale University, but Connecticut, I think Connecticut is primarily known as, because it's such close proximity to New York and Boston, it was always utilized, and because it's a shoreline state, it was utilized by a lot of the rich people to have a second home. You got like David Letterman and Michael Bolton and all these different people, and these Oprah and all those people would have homes in Connecticut. That's a part of the thing. But that's what Connecticut's known for on a surface level, like the easy one. And it's a part of New England. It's got the whole shore life appeal and the shoreline, but it's definitely a state that's slept on. I feel like Rhode Island gets slept on too, but
Yeah.
Connecticut gets super slept on.
Funny you mentioned the celebrities that live there, because I've delivered, I was delivering food during COVID to some of these mansions in Connecticut, and I
Yeah,
couldn't believe where I was. These houses. It was like
right.
1 second in Connecticut, I'm in mansions. The next second, I'm in like strip clubs, and I'm driving
Absolute
through
good
strip
area.
clubs and strip malls, and it's just the dynamic, the wealth difference, and some real quick. You know what I mean? It's
I think that's what a lot of people don't get. They think it's either like woods and cows and rich people, and I didn't grow up like that. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's not what. And so it always surprised me when I finally got out into the world and saw what other people's perception was of Connecticut.
yeah. What sports teams do Connecticut people residents go for? Do they go
All right, so
Boston or New York?
yeah, so that's the tricky part, right? So that's the
Right,
crazy part. So if you're a hockey fan, obviously it was the Whalers, okay?
right.
Because we had the Whalers, and then we have the UConn men's basketball, right?
Yeah.
So we've always been pretty good with basketball. But like for example, I'm a Celtics fan and I'm a Yankees fan. And then historically, generationally, I don't want people coming at me for this. I don't fucking follow sports anymore. I just don't have the time. I wish I did.
Yeah.
I love sports. I just don't have the time to follow. But historically, my family are Cowboys fans. And the reason for that is back in the 60s, the Cowboys in Dallas made this huge initiative to bolster their fan base. So they came up to the East Coast and they gave away tons of tickets, tons of tickets and merchandise, and in a way to kind of get people to be fans. And they kept coming back and making all these families in the tri-state area Cowboys fans. So that's why there's so many Cowboys fans in the tri-state area. And my grandfather was, he was a recipient of that Cowboys love, which is why I grew up as a Cowboys fan.
Yeah. And one last thing I'll say about Connecticut is the rest stops on the major ways,
Yeah,
crazy. Compared to
yeah,
Massachusetts rest stops, they're fucking wild. They're like one lane and people are flying in there.
right,
It's
right, yeah.
crazy. It's
Connecticut
crazy.
bugged out for sure.
Hip hop wise, you must have been in a good area because you're close to New York growing up. That must have been a big inspiration on you, right?
Humongous, absolutely humongous. We spent all our time, like I got to cut my teeth in Harlem on 125th Street in Cyphers, and I got to cut my teeth, going down later and that was the early to mid 90s. We'd be out in Harlem, we'd be in the Bronx, we'd be at certain spots. But then, later, late 90s, 2000s, we would go further down and go to like, Lyricist Lounge, go to the Village, go to Fat Beats, go to New Eurekan Lounge, all these different spots, Washington Square Park, all these different things. And, go to Rocksteady Crew anniversaries and all these different events. So absolutely, it was huge. But the same thing could be said for Boston. We would go to a lot of events in Boston. And towards the late 90s, I spent a tremendous amount of time in Boston with the whole underground scenes with you as well. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And during that whole time period, that was huge too. But New York was a huge influence. And we used to get a lot of New York radio shows on the radio sometimes. If the night was right and it was clear night and we caught a Hot 97 signal or something like that, which was dope. So, but New York was tremendous influence as well as Boston.
Yeah. Now you've also we've talked before, but you also contribute a lot of your inspiration to the West Coast as well. Because
Oh,
you were adamant about coming to that Souls of Mischief show, and you had that first album poster. I mean, you always talked about that had a big influence on you as an MC.
massive hieroglyphics specifically.
Right.
Hieroglyphics were up there with, so it was like hieroglyphics, organized confusion, Wu Tang. Those were my biggest influences. You know what I'm saying? I would say organized confusion first, hieroglyphics. Actually, they're probably neck and neck. But the time period of '93 for hieroglyphics, Dell's album, Casual's album, Souls of Mischief, that time period was so huge for me, man. I got all the tapes on the walls right here and posters all over the place. But man, those guys mean the absolute world to me, and they're fantastic guys. But that Hyro sound was just such a huge how bohemian it was, and how different and unique and strange, and the samples they choose to use. I still listen to 93 Till and No Need for Alarm and Fear Itself constantly. Every week I'm listening to those albums.
Wow.
So yeah, absolutely the West Coast. That Hieroglyphics crew specifically. I mean, there's tons of West Coast artists who I love. I love Ice Cube. You know what I mean?
Right.
The reason I'm wearing this fucking hat is because of Ice Cube in the
Yeah,
90s.
right.
You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man, those huge influence on me.
So
Souls.
when did you go from Alien Tongue to Apathy?
Um, I would say late 90s, because I mean when I was Alien Tongue was around the time period from when I was a part of Alien Nation, and I was in then Jedi Mind Tricks. My guest appearances on Jedi Mind Tricks was my first appearance ever. That was Apathy,
Yeah.
the Alien Tongue. And
Yeah.
fucking, I took on the Alien Tongue when I was like 15, from ages 15 to like 17, maybe a little bit of 18. But I was dead serious about that shit. Studying all the alien sciences, and being down with Alien Nation. Alien Nation was a crew and collective out of Marcy Projects in Brooklyn. Supernatural
Oh,
was down with Alien Nation as well. And they were these guys, they were signed to Palace Records, who, E-Rule and Crucial Conflict, they were on Palace Records as well. Palace Records was owned by these Japanese dudes. And Alien Nation were super into like the esoteric sciences, the Dr. Malachi York, and it was kind of the stuff that I had been on. And me being down with Alien Nation is why I eventually reached out to Jedi Mind Tricks when I saw their EP, because it's the same kind of shit we studied, rapped about, talked about, lived, eat, breathed, slept. You know what I'm saying? It was the whole thing that we were into. So that Alien Tongue thing, man, I was really into that shit.
wasn't Alien Nation also a show? I want to say it was a show, wasn't it?
Yes, bro, it was a
I
fire.
don't remember. I never saw it, but I remember it. I remember it.
It started out with a movie,
Yeah.
and then it was a show.
Right.
And the show was, both of them were dope. Like, I love the movie, but the show was crazy. And I'm sure that's where Alien Nation got inspired to get their name from. But
Right.
that movie was so dope. The aliens would get drunk off of sour milk, like rotten milk. And
Oh.
seawater, ocean seawater was like acid to them. It would kill them.
Oh, really?
But it was dope. Really good fucking movie. Really good
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah. I remember that was a big thing.
Yeah.
What came first? Demigods or you putting out solo records? Because I'm a little confused on that right there.
Demigods was so the way Demigods happened was I was just a kid trying to rap. You know what I'm saying? I had just gotten to the point where I was writing my raps and being serious. And Demigods was already an established group in this small town in Connecticut, little small town. But these guys who I was friends with, they had introduced me to Open Mike, who's still one of my absolute best friends, brothers of my life. Open Mike does all my covers and graphic arts. He did the video for, a lot of the Demigods record. A lot of he did the video for Dead in the Middle and Dead in the whatever, Dead in the Middle and another record. But so Mike's a videographer, Mike's a graphics guy, but Mike had Demigods. All right, let me get back to that. Mike had Demigods since the early 90s, okay? They came up with the group. It used to be called Nobility. They be rapping about fucking Lord of the Rings and UFOs and all that crazy shit, which was dope because I couldn't get enough of that shit at the time. You know what I'm saying? Mystical, whimsical, all that shit, like how Boogie Monsters and X-Clan and all that shit, the Ultra Mag, all that lyrical content on Organized Confusion, I couldn't get enough of that shit. So Mike and them were doing that, and they had 4-track tapes. They had screen prints that they did in their high school where they had fucking jackets with their logos on it and this dope graffiti Demigods with little fucking aliens on it and shit. And I was like, oh my God, what the fuck is this? So I had asked for an introduction with my boy Voodoo, because Voodoo used to be down with them. He used to be a part of them. God rest in peace, my brother Voodoo. And Voo was down with them, and Voo introduced me to Mike. And I got in with Mike. We started making demos, and we made this demo called Galaxy Rays. and it's on. I have it on Spotify. It's available right now. All my old Alien Tongue demos. And
I
this
saw
record,
that. Saw
yeah, yeah, this record,
that.
we sampled Cool Keith going Galaxy Rays, and it was dope, man. It was insane because I was in high school, bro, at the time. And in my high school, everybody knew I rapped. But then one day I showed up at high school with a Walkman, and I'm like, yo, I got a song. There's a song on this, and it was official. So everybody's like, yo, I remember being in the hallway for like mad long, everybody crowding around to put the headphones on and take a turn to listen. And teachers being like, what are you guys doing? Break it up, get out of here. Then we go to class, I get out of the class, everybody's like, yo, crowd around me again. Let me hear it. It was wild, bro. I was like a celebrity in my freshman year of high school with this underground hip hop I was doing. So Demigods came first, and Demigods went through a lot of changes and transitions. Like it started out with just me and Mike. Me and Mike started going to New York. I'm sorry, Demigods had other members before me. When I joined, it was pretty much breaking up, and then it became just me and Mike. And then we just continued stuff, and we made changes over time. You know, then Self joined years later. Self joined about 5 years after I did, 5 or 6 years. Yeah, I think 5 or 6 years after I did. And we turned Demigods into something else. And then I kind of took the reins. Mike had a kid. Mike had a wife. His life changed. So I took the reins because I was younger than Mike. Mike is like 4 or 5 years older than me. So I took the reins for Demigods, and I kind of went off and started building what people know are more familiar with Demigods now. But initially, it was me joining this dope ass, bohemian Souls of Mischief type group. And it was the most magical time period, man. Because I went from just being a fan and not knowing how this shit was done and making pause tapes and everything like that to getting actual beat tapes from Mike. Mike was making beats on this program called Pro Tracker that he did on a Commodore 64. I shit you not.
I had a Commodore 64.
Yeah, so there was this program called Pro Tracker, and it wasn't even based off of BPMs. It was based off of time. Like you had to like count. So it was really crazy, but it's unbelievable that we got anything done at all.
So your first music was recorded on a Commodore 64?
Well, the beats were made on a Commodore 64, and then we recorded on a 4-track, and we recorded on the microphones at the University of Connecticut in the radio station that I had a show at called WHUS 91.7. And we recorded there because they had, the pretty decent mics, and we hooked up the fucking 4-track to those microphones to use their mics. And also because there was a little B side, a production room, a Studio B production room, and all the walls were soundproof, and we didn't have nothing like that. So it was crazy. Otherwise, we would just be recording fucking demos on an SM58 in Mike's basement, which sounded like shit,
Yeah.
So we were lucky to have those resources,
Yeah. Early 2000s, you start making some really big splashes with all your 12 inches.
Right.
Immortal, I remember that one. Immortal was a big one. And then that old Boom Bap, few others, I can't remember them all, but that's when I feel like you really were putting your stamp on the game at that point as an introduction.
Right. The
wrong?
Smackdown I had with C Ray's Walls and Rise and all that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that time period was really fucking magical too, because that was the indie boom. Like the indie boom was the best, man. That's when all of us guys who were like little brothers to the major label guys, like we were like the underclassmen of like DITC and all those crews, you know what I'm saying? We were the little brothers, and we just like wanted to be like our big brothers. So we didn't get deals and we weren't getting signed. So we're like, yo, let's make this shit and put this shit out ourselves. So we just started figuring shit out. And then the one thing that helped, that catapulted us, that gave me a huge advantage was I met up with Self-Titled. Self and I became best friends real quick. And Self procured a job at Bronx Science Distribution, Bud's Distribution, Bronx Science Records. And Bronx Science was putting out a whole bunch of shit. Bronx Science was owned by two guys, Livy OG, who's a legendary New York radio guy, and this other guy, Dave Wallace. And they were putting out a whole bunch of vinyl. They were putting out stuff from everybody, Scoob Lover, Johnny Famous, all these different guys. And you know, Blas, Big Boy from Blase Blase, all these different artists, they were putting out tons of records. But Bronx Science was putting out mad shit. So when I got there, they signed me to a little deal, and I just put out whatever the fuck I wanted to put out. That's why I was hitting all those 12 inches, and I had distribution off the rip. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have to like sell out the trunk. I was still selling out the trunk. I was selling CDs. We would fucking make and go to Staples and print out the cover and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like the little bootleg burnt CDs. But with the vinyl, we were going off the rip. And that vinyl, that indie boom was fucking crazy because, bro, at the time I'm like 19 years old and I'm recording 2 songs, right? And you got on A side, you got the instrumental acapella clean version, Dirty, and B side, same fucking thing. And they're like cutting me checks on the spot for $5,000. And I'm like, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? They're like, and I'm once again, I'm 19 years old and I'm getting cut all these checks and I'm making this money for making a couple songs. So it was really dope, man. And then the scene back then was incredible. All of us knew each other. Every single one of us, all of us fucking knew each other. Because we'd all be at Fat Beats, Lyricist Lounge, New Eurekan, like I said before, and we were all down with each other. You know, everybody was going up on Bob Ito's show because Stretch and Bob had dissolved by that point. But it was a magical time, man. There was nothing like it. And the creativity was at an all-time fucking high. You know, everybody was trying to outdo each other. Everybody was trying to be ultra creative. You know, you had even like we would all be freaked out about, you know, like what Company Flow was doing and they had fucking what's the Cannibal Ox, and when Adam's Family and all those groups would come out. It was crazy to see the creativity. There was this group Saya and Yeshua, and they put out a song that was like 12 minutes long, and everybody's like, yo. So we were every time something new and crazy. And you know, 7L and Esoteric had the Transformers sample for Be Alert. Everybody was just trying to outdo each other. J Live had Bragging Rights, where he's cutting up the fucking sample that he's rapping over. Everybody was trying to outdo each other with creativity, and it was working. Everybody really pushed to maximum creativity. We were all doing really fucking crazy shit. We were all fans of this shit. We're at shows and events, buying each other's vinyl, buying each other's CDs and cassettes, you know, being at Rocksteady anniversaries, I remember seeing like Murs and the Living Legends guys buying their tapes. Just everybody, man. It was a really incredible time.
Yeah, beautiful time. From here, you get enough buzz that you get a deal, right?
So
major record deal.
We continue. It wasn't that fast. It was years where we were putting out vinyl and we were putting out EPs, and then I did this EP. Me and Self did this Demigods EP called "The Gods Must Be Crazy."
Yeah, and
that landed. On that, we had redone and paid homage to the Chronic intro, Dr. Dre's Chronic intro, and Jimmy Iovine ended up hearing it, and Jimmy was like, "These kids are fucking dope." This guy Jason, Jason's last name is escaping me right now. I think it's doesn't matter. Shout out to Jason. But Jason he worked for Jimmy Iovine at Interscope at the time, so he brought The Gods Must Be Crazy to Jimmy, and Jimmy is like, "Yo, I want these guys, man. Fly these guys out." So at the time, I'm 22, 23. And me and Self get flown out to LA. And man, I was hit back then too. Even though we were making money for 12 inches, I was spending it as fast as I could make it. You know what I'm saying? And Interscope, and like I said, this is like 2022, 2023, 2022 probably. And this guy, Jason, flew us out there.
Me, 2002.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes. Pardon me, bro. Dad brain, man. Dad brain.
It's all good. It's all good.
Correct. 2002.
Yeah, big difference.
Right. So 2002, we get flown out there, and Interscope puts us up in the Standard on Sunset. They rented us an SUV. We didn't have a cell phone, so they gave us like a company cell phone at the time. Said whatever we want, put it on the hotel bill, everything. So we're eating there, we're fucking getting haircuts in the barbershop downstairs, charging it to the room, calling all over the world, calling up homies in Europe and shit, and fucking everywhere. We're just losing our minds. we had the fucking we had the rental car. We're driving all over the fuck LA. Like we're driving like fucking hours and hours. And these guys are like, hey, we gotta have a meeting tomorrow. And we're like, all right, yeah, we'll be there. But you know, we went up to Interscope and it was dope because Interscope at these labels have these huge rooms, as most people know, huge rooms with all of their CDs and their discographies of everything they've ever put out. And they let you take everything. So we're going in there. I'm taking like 3 box sets of like Led Zeppelin and shit. We're taking English rap shit. You know what I'm saying? I was out and it was dope. But what ended up happening was Jimmy Iovine was at the Eminem cleaning out my closet video shoot. And he needed to be there. So he didn't end up meeting with us. And while we were out there, our boy Miles from BMI, I think it's Miles Lewis, Miles represented us with BMI, and Miles told Mike Karen from Atlantic that we were going to be out there. So Mike had a meeting with us. Mike Karen met with Self and I, and ultimately he's like, yo, I want to sign you, Apathy, and Self will have him guaranteed on the album. I don't want a group though. I just want Apathy. And we'll have, and so we worked it in so Self was guaranteed to have certain production and features on the album too. So Self's working on the album with me. And we met with Mike right away. Mike said he wanted to sign us. We fly back to the East Coast. We meet with Craig Coleman at the Atlantic office, Julie Greenwald, all that. And they signed us. They signed us, and they really fucked with us at first, you know. And they loved me, but then it started getting weird, man. They wanted me to do weirdo shit, and they wanted me to do really corny stuff, and just like it just wasn't for me. And all I wanted to do was boom bap hip hop shit, you know. I just wanted to work with Premier and Pete Rock and Alchemist and all these different people, and they were just sending me crazy shit. And you know, at the time, Mike's artists were Trick Daddy, Trina, T.I., Nappy Roots, Twista, Trey Songz, a lot of T artists.
Yeah.
But that was Mike's whole shit. So,
Right.
you know, me fitting in there, I was the black sheep of all that shit. And then
Yeah.
at that same time, though, signed to Atlantic, which was frustrating for me, was my homies, good friends. I love all these guys. Was Little Brother was signed at that time. Shout out to Fonte and Pooh. Shout out to Joe Scudder and Flash. And Lupe. Shout out to Lupe too. I love Lupe Fiasco. Those guys were all signed, and we were all, you know, and Saigon too. Saigon was too. So we were all over there, and those guys, you know, they definitely Saigon's album. We all know that got held up, but the other guys, they were putting out what they wanted to do. You know what I'm saying? And Little Brother just put out their album the way they wanted it. And I'm like, God damn, why the fuck can't I do that, bro? But they were like micromanaging me, and I think they just wanted to do some bigger weirdo white boy shit. And it's funny because Atlantic was like doing things like, you know, I'm turning in songs the way I always rap. And he's like, no one's gonna believe that you're this person. You need to be doing songs about college and beer pong. And I'm like, I didn't graduate high school, bro. How are you gonna say, like, how's that realistic? How's that reality? I'm not gonna fucking do college and beer pong. So it was just crazy, man. It was a crazy time.
And you got, you know, and you got kind of held up there you were on a hiatus there for a while because did you put anything out?
Yes.
I feel like, what am I missing? Because I feel like I remember being like, where's Apathy's music for a little bit.
So I did that intentionally. I released a mixtape called "Where's Your Album?"
Right,
That's
I knew
all
that
everyone
one.
was talking to me about. But the point is, I didn't stop. I kept putting out singles. I kept putting out underground shit. And then, even when I was signed with Atlantic Records, I still put out Eastern Philosophy while I was still.
Okay. I didn't know that came out while you're on there.
I was signed for like 4 years. You know what I'm saying?
So they let you do stuff like that, or did you just do it anyway?
Both. It was both because Mike Karen was hoping that I was gonna just magically do something that would take off. Like that's what these labels want to do. The labels, for sure, they want to do some work and they're going to do a little bit of work, but they want artists who magically blow up with their own song, like Superboy, not Superboy, what the fuck is his name? Superman, you know what I'm talking about. Superman that, ho.
I don't know that one, dude. Superman
What's
that
his
hoe.
name, bro?
Google
You know
that.
what I'm talking about.
If I heard the name, I probably know. But just like,
Yeah.
they just want like a single that's going to take off, or an artist.
Soldier Boy.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So they want something that's gonna take off and that's gonna go viral on its own. So they were. I think Mike was hoping that I would do that because I started to make a whole bunch of songs. You know, I would rap over certain rock things and do that, and he was hoping that things would pop off for me, and that would make their load a lot lighter. You know what I'm saying? Like that would be like an alley-oop for them because it would be easier. So Mike saw that it was building. Like I was getting European tours on my own based off my underground shit, not because of Atlantic. So Mike was like, "This is a good thing. You should keep doing this while you're working on your Atlantic album." And I'm like, "Yeah, all right, cool. That's fucking cool with me." And then I did Eastern Philosophy, and Atlantic wrote off. They signed off on it. They're like, "Yeah, okay, cool." So Chuck Wilson at Baby Grand did basically a licensing deal with me for Eastern Philosophy. And when I left Atlantic, they technically owned it at the time, but I walked away with the masters for Eastern Philosophy and all the material that I recorded during the Atlantic time period.
Nice. And right around this, is this when you joined Army of Pharaohs? Right around this time?
Yeah, so Army of the Pharaohs was interesting because Paz was going to, back in the day, I mean, you know, me and Paz go back to being teenagers. You know, we started rocking with each other when I was like 16. So Paz wanted to do a group originally with me, Bahamadia, Cannabis, Virtuoso, called the Tibetan Black Magicians. I think it was Cannabis too. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that, you know, but it was definitely gonna be Virtuoso and Bahamadia, and it was gonna be called Tibetan Black Magicians. That was originally gonna be Army of the Pharaohs. I don't know what the fuck happened, but it ended up changing gears. And Paz hit us up one time and was like, "Yo, we're doing this group, Army of the Pharaohs. Let's go." And I was like, "Absolutely, let's fucking do it." So that was a great thing, man. We just started collabing, we started rocking, and you know, that's when doing tracks through email started to become way more of a thing. Because when I recorded for the Psychosocial, I had to fucking take a train out to Philly.
Right.
Enough time had gone by where it was more of a regular practice to, you know, work on these records through email, which was a huge benefit.
Yeah.
But
massive.
Yeah, man. But yeah, that's Army of the Pharaohs was definitely around that time.
Can't mention Demigods and Army of Pharaohs without mentioning Blackistan. Rest in peace. You were a good friend. You guys were very close.
Yeah, one of my best friends.
His recent passing. Talk a
Right.
little more about Blackistan and what that relationship meant to you.
So Black was easily one of my best friends, and Black was not a normal human being. Everybody loved him universally, and he was just. It didn't matter who you were or what circles you were a part of. You felt like Blackistan was your best friend. You know, me and him spent a tremendous amount of time with each other, but even the people like when he was doing car sales, when he was a car salesman, he was his family at the car sales spot at the car lot, they thought he was their best friend. He was their family. You know, his other friends who he was down with, they felt like that. Black touched so many people, and he was so important to so many people. It was unbelievable. He's the greatest human being I've ever known. You know, him and my father. You know what I mean? And Black was just he was magically charismatic. He was just if there's no way somebody disliked Blackistan. It's just absolutely fucking impossible. And he was just the greatest guy ever, man. Him and I had so many adventures. It's hard to even talk about. Like there's so many fucking things that we went to go do, and just he would always. I'm at the studio right now, and I used to live right across from where my studio is, right out the window, and just right even downstairs at the parking lot that I could see out the window. So many times he would pull up, just doing dumb shit. I'd look out the window, he'd be dancing outside because he knows I'm looking. He'd be dancing outside the car, and you know what I'm saying. We jump in the car, we'd be bumping dance hall and just all this different stuff, man. He was easily one of my best friends, and it's impossible for me to talk about how magic of a person he was, how good of a guy he was, how much everybody truly loved him. He was a magic. He was too good for this fucking earth, man. He was an amazing guy.
Feel that. Rest in peace, Blackistan. From here, also, you release, which I think is like, I don't know, one of your craziest albums is Honky Kong.
Yeah.
Thing is a scorcher. And it's not just because of the features. You produced majority of the album yourself, right? Like, is this the first time you actually did that?
No, I didn't produce a majority of that. That was a lot of other producers too. I
read differently because I thought it says somewhere that you produced majority of it, and it was only a couple. I wasn't sure.
I think I produced. I want to say I produced maybe 50% of it, maybe 45%. But you know, it was like Premiere,
I knew that.
fucking, you know, Premiere, Beat Miner, Static Selector, fucking Muggs, you know, just Stu Bangers. There was a lot of producers on there.
Well, I guess majority would mean that you did more than those guys.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
So, you know,
it wasn't until like Wanna Snuggle and Wanna Snuggle was before this, but Wanna Snuggle, Connecticut Casual, and I think I entirely did Handshakes with Snakes, but yeah. But Honky Kong was the biggest deal for me because it was my first time working with Preem. You know what I'm saying? A lot of these guys, I had Action Bronson on there. I had fucking a lot of goats to me, a lot of like bucket list guys like Mad Lion and you know.
Yeah. The names you had on there were ridiculous. It was almost overkill. It was like, holy shit.
Yeah,
so many on it.
Super
talk about working with Premiere. How that track, because the video is crazy, the song is crazy. Just talk about that whole stuff that you're doing.
Premiere's the greatest, man. I learned a really interesting lesson with Premiere because, you know, my whole life, because we had to do this by ourselves, because we had to, you know what I'm saying? It's like fending for yourself. So I always felt like I had to give people direction so they would give me the desired result that I want. And with Premiere, you just got to let Premiere do his fucking thing and get out the way, right? And so at first I'm like, yo, I got an idea. And he's like, all right, you know, Premiere's not too receptive, but he's a great guy. So you know what I'm saying? Like, and Premiere, if anybody knows, Premiere doesn't slide you a beat tape. Everything, no matter who it is, no matter if it's Jay-Z, Nas, it's all custom made. Like Premiere doesn't have beat tapes. He doesn't give you a tape of 20 beats to listen to. It's just not how he works. So Preem, at first I was like, yo, fucking use the drums from like U2 Bloody Sunday, but chop them up different. And you know, Premiere's like, all right. And then he sent me this joint with this piano, and I was like, nah, man, that's not it either. So the only direction I gave him, I said, look, I want a joint that we can murder a crowd to and hype up a crowd, and I want it to feel like the same energy as like some fucking hard to earn shit. And I want to really rock the crowd. And he's like, all right, bet. And I said, yo, I said, there's a sample I've been wanting to use since I was young. Because Preem, the one thing Preem is open to is ideas for cuts, or if you give him a title, right? Because him and Guru used to do that. You give him the title of the song, he goes off that. So I said, yo, I've always wanted to cut up fucking Humpty Hump. Stop what you're doing because I'm about to ruin the image. All right, stop what you're doing. I've always wanted to have that cut, and I saved it forever. And I saved it until I had the perfect song. And I said, well, yo, what better time than to use this than now? Premiere fucking, he sends me a demo of it. Self-hated it at first.
Oh, shit.
I hope I'm not blowing him up. He'll probably admit to that too, but I think that's a funny part of the story. At first, Self was like, I hate this. And I was like, you don't got to be on it if you don't want to. He's like, nah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And so And then Preem sent me the version with the cuts over it. And I was like, this is fucking crazy. And I got, by the way, shout out to DJ Eclipse for introducing me to Premiere. That was a great hookup. But so anyway, so Premiere hooked up, stop what you're doing. And I remember like the song being done. And I'm like, yo, I got one more request. Can you put one of those distinct classic Premiere intros on with the different sample? He goes, oh yeah, I got you. And then he did it, and then he recorded his vocals, and I was just like, fuck, man, this is amazing. But Preem and I became very, very, very good friends. And Preem still to this day is one of my closest friends in the industry. We talk all the time. He's one of the best guys ever. And that's fucking surreal to me. I never get lost on how special that is, that, you know, he's one of my absolute idols, and he became a very good friend of mine.
Did you mix and master the record? Because I know you're pretty adamant about that.
Yeah.
He let you mix it. You let you mix the record?
Yeah. So here's a funny
Wow.
thing. Him and Mr. Walt were talking, and they both say that next to Kanye West, I'm the biggest control freak they've ever worked with.
Oh,
Like, I'm
wow.
And then Premiere says this, right? Premiere's like, no, I don't let anybody mix my records except for like me and Eddie Sancho. And I said, bro, let me send you 2 examples of records that I mixed, and you tell me if it's cool. If not, totally, you can mix it. He said, all right, perfect, let's do that. So I sent him 2 records that I did for Honky Kong, and I said, I mixed these, and I sent it to him. And like a half an hour went by, and I'm like, fuck, man. And then he texts me, he goes, where do you want me to send the files? Yes. And then he even said in an interview one time, he was like, Apathy is the only, this wasn't even about me really, but he was talking about mixes. He's like, Apathy's the only artist who I ever let in history mix one of my records. And wow. I don't know if that still holds true to this day, but at the time it was. So, but then
how did you get good at engineering like that?
Necessity, man. Bro, the thing that I want to just impress upon people is I'm a tortured fucking artist, bro. I never think my shit's good enough, man. And I'm just always like miserable with everything. So I want my shit to sound like the classic shit. So I listen to those records. I did comparative mixes. Self also helped me a lot too. Self taught me how to mix a lot of things, like how to mix things a certain way, how to mix vocals to the snare of the record sometimes, just certain little things that I do. And then it came with trial and error. Like, I think a lot of artists just settle at some point. They're like, it's good enough, let's put it out. I'm never like that. Like, it takes me months and months and months. I mix down songs, I bounce it down, I bring it to the whip, I drive around. I'm like, nah, that hi-hat, I need to fucking tune out some of the high frequency of the hi-hat, turn it up, pan it to the left by 10%. I need the kick to have more texture. I want the bass to sound warmer but turned down so the vocals are cut through. It's missing a sound that has mid-range. I'm a lunatic, man. And so it just came from years and years and years of wanting to have a certain sound and not stopping or not releasing it and not being okay with it until it was perfect in my thoughts, you know?
Yeah. We'll go back to the relationship with Self-Titled, because you guys are best friends. You guys go basically in business together, and you guys tour as almost a duo. Let's talk about that relationship right there.
Right. So it's just always been like that, man. We've always been like Red and Meth, you know what I'm saying? Raekwon and Ghostface. We've always gotten down like that. And we built, I think we learned together, you know what I'm saying? Like, we were young men coming up in the industry, and we just learned how to do everything together, from touring to problem solving to doing things. And Self and I had like what is that fucking The Odd Couple type of relationship, where Self was very different than I, but we had our strengths, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'd be more outgoing and do more stuff, network with people more, contact people more, and Self was more about the details and the business and the fine print and, you know, maximizing profit and our margins and all this shit. And I was more of the creative side and pushing things out. So it always just worked out. Now we're at a point right now where he's going to start to tour with Esso, and I'm gonna tour Dolo, but that's not like people are like, oh, y'all all right? I'm like, yeah, man, he's my best. We talk every day. Like
I
we're
thought too. I was like, did they have a fight?
nah, we're best. Bro, we fought like two times in like fucking 26, 28
Come
years.
on, come
And
on.
it wasn't even real fights. And then 20 minutes later, I'm on the phone. I'm like, yo, man, I really apologize, man. I was an asshole about that. But so I'm just a dad now. I can't go out to the West Coast right now, right this minute. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I'm a dad. I got my kids 4 days a week. I'm busy, man. My kids got sports and shit. You know what I'm saying? They got school. I'm just really entrenched. So when I do these shows, I'm gonna be doing New England shows and staying in close proximity to home, you
Right.
know, and doing things differently.
Right.
So I think that's pretty much, the only difference.
Right. You also, in the middle of all, after album after album and album, you've been on a tear ever since 2000. You've been nonstop. Um, you decided I'm going to take a left turn here and start selling some real estate, which was
Yeah.
totally out of the blue.
Well,
Totally out of the blue.
I
Did you
realized,
do it
man,
because? Yeah, go ahead.
I realized at a certain point, I start seeing a lot of my legends and a lot of my friends who I love so much. And the music only gets you so far. And this is a very ageist culture, right? So unless you've made some type of serious um investments, and unless you've done something to create some type of generational wealth, there's no guarantee that this music is going to hold you over forever.
Right.
So putting all your eggs in one basket is wildly irresponsible. And I want my kids to learn certain things and learn certain hustles. So I think that doing this kind of thing in doing real estate, originally it's cool money wise, but it also opens the doors for ideas of investment and being adept in that world that's going to move the needle for me and change things. I mean, what's more valuable than real estate? I mean,
Not much.
yeah, but it's
Not
one of the most
much.
important things in the world. And so I just wanted my kids to learn certain things, my kids to have certain things. And to be honest, my family didn't have that. Like a lot of my family is check to check. You know what I'm saying? Forever. And when my father passed, he left me some power tools. You know what I'm saying? Like, and not that I needed anything. I've always been on my own, and it's all good because the biggest thing my father left to me is his wisdom, his love, and he was, I was very, very, very close with my father. But my point is, I'd love to leave something for my kids when I go. You know what I'm saying? And hopefully, God willing, that'll happen. But so I wanted to get into a world of investments and doing something a little bit more.
Right. And you're still doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a house under contract right now, and I'm about to list the house with some other clients. And it's
Good
so
for you.
funny because I thought that it was just going to go like this. I thought I was going to go, okay, I'm just going to leave hip hop and I'm going to start doing real estate. And I started wearing the fucking suits originally, not
Yeah.
cursing. Started to change the way I spoke, and I'm like, code switching. I'm like, hey, how you doing? My name is Chad. Blah 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 blah. And then I'm like, this isn't it, man. And I had a great mentor, this guy Jay Cusack, great mentor to me. And he was pretty big on me just being myself and just doing my thing. And I always used to see how he moved and he did things. And I realized, people trust me more and fuck with me more when I'm very authentic and I'm very knowledgeable, because I'm extremely knowledgeable with real estate. Once again, like how I'm a lunatic with mixes and the business of music, I'm like that with real estate. I'm crazy about contracts. I'm crazy about the legalities, about the ethical approach, and people fuck with me because of that. So I said, "Fuck this! I'm taking off the suits, putting my hat back on. I'll pull up bumping Wu-Tang in their driveway. I don't care, because when they hear what I know, it's going to help them far more than some agent who blows smoke up their ass."
Fair enough. We've talked on the phone and I've seen you make some posts about it. You taking these walks in the woods because you've talked about having issues with anxiety.
Sure, all my life.
Yeah. Talk about that some more because I suffer from that. A lot of other people I know suffer from that. Talk about how you deal with that.
Sure, man. I mean, let's look. I'll even go back. I think it's worth it. When I was a kid, I had a I grew up in a fucked up way. I had teenage parents. They had a hard time. They weren't used to being parents. They were teenagers when they had me. It was the 80s. There was a lot of drugs. There was a lot of bullshit. There was a lot of instability. And as a kid, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel good. You know what I'm saying? Thank God nothing really horrific happened, but it wasn't a good time. It wasn't good. And I didn't feel stable and I didn't feel good. So a lot of us who grew up under those circumstances, I developed anxiety, panic disorder, anxiety, general anxiety. Later on, it turned to depersonalization, derealization, fucking ADHD, depression, all these things. And I got to a point where, when I was a kid, we would go to certain things here and there. Once in a while we go out, they drive us out, get in the car, drive a half an hour, go to a fucking pond or a lake. But for the most part, it's not like I was like raised camping. I didn't know how to do any of that shit, And then a few years ago, I started hiking and going on some paths, and there were some really regular, simple pedestrian ones. But then I started pushing the limits and going out farther. And all of a sudden, I'm like 4 miles into the woods, and I'm like, holy shit, I got 6 miles to go. And at first, I'm like, this is fucking crazy. But I just fell in love with it. And I started paying attention to what was going on around me and practicing mindfulness and being caught in the moment, in the present. And, I tried like through my phone in my backpack and just focused on thinking about nothing. I'm trying to think about nothing, not what I'm going to eat later, not about my fucking bills, not about business or anything like that. And I just tried to really focus on the sounds that were around me and what was going on and me being alive. You know what I'm saying? My father died of cancer. Most of my father's side of the family died of cancer. And I'm alive. I'm here right now. And we have a very finite time. The clock is ticking. The fucking hourglass is ticking. I tattooed the hourglass on my finger. You know what I'm saying? Your time is ticking right now. So I wanted to experience that time, and I want to be closer to nature and that feeling. So I was really serious about hiking and getting that exercise in, which helps a lot with the anxiety and the panic.
Feel that. I do similar stuff. I want to talk about the new album because I really love this one. This one, I think I Connecticut Casual Chapter 2. I love the production, the samples. What do you do different with this one than the other albums? Explain it to people that don't know.
So there was always hints of this sound in my other albums. There was hints of it, right?
Yeah.
There'd be a couple tracks.
Right.
But this young producer, Player Hayes, he's incredible, man. He's a savant. And he's effortlessly creative. And he brought out the confidence in me to go with this sound as my main sound that I love. Because we just started naturally. He's sending me so many records and I'm recording demos to them. And I'm like, yo, all of these are starting to have they have a vibe. Right. It's like fucking Pete Rock and CL Smooth main ingredient. Everything had a smooth vibe to it. And I'm like, and I had an epiphany. I was kind of like, this is what makes me the happiest. Right. Like, I really like that fans, throughout history have liked when I have like a cinematic evil horror movie sample and I'm like, Dungeons and Dragons and molecules and decapitators and swords. That's cool. Yo, I get it, bro. Because I love when Pharoah Monch does that shit. But what makes me personally go to my happy place and what fulfills me and fills my cup and fucking helps my soul is when I make records that sound like Tribe Called Quest and Diggable Planets and Pete Rock and CL Smooth and vibey shit. And when I get to talk about things that happen in my life and when I get to talk about, things I'm interested in, the Kennedy family and all this fascinating shit. And also I'm obsessed with the ocean. The ocean's right out my window. This is where I grew up. You know what I'm saying? Like on the shoreline is where I came up. And this is what I'm obsessed with. This is what I love. So doing this kind of sound is the happiest I've ever been in my life. And it's like, last year, me and Stu Bangers put together a fucking murderous album.
Yeah.
One of the greatest albums I've ever done. I got Jada Kiss on it, Black Thought on it. Those are bucket.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we didn't, because me and Stu did an incredible album, but I'm happier now doing the sound that I want to do. without worrying about what the fans want or what somebody else wants. I'm making the music, and then I was rewarded for it. You know what I'm saying? People really fucked with it. People heard Connecticut Casual Chapter 2, and they're like, I fucking love this. This is
Yeah,
amazing.
it is.
Thank you, man.
Could be
Thank
one
you.
of my favorite projects of yours.
Thank you,
Could be
man. It's
my favorite.
easily my favorite album that I've ever done.
Plus,
But
like lyrically, you're still right there. You know, you're not. You might even be better. I don't know. It's
I
tough to say. You're good, but you
thank you.
know, I
I
always
think
feel
I
like if you
got
got
better.
talent, you get better. I feel like you get better if you're good. But
Yo, you know what's the craziest thing about it, too, Leeds? So normally every other album you've ever seen me do, Honky Kong, Killmatic, fucking King of Gods, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like all these other albums, these albums usually take me 2 to 4 years average, okay? And they're all in a holding pattern. So albums come out while another one's being worked on, and it takes 2 to 4 years for me to do an album. When I did this fucking Connecticut Casual Chapter 2 album, 4 months. 4 months. This shit wrote itself. And the other crazy thing is too, I feel like I'm lyrically getting better. I write like fucking lightning right now. It's like a joke. It's like it just falls out of the sky. I write like fucking lightning, bro. And it's just it feels the most natural. It feels the best.
that's great, bro. Well, congrats on that.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
So we're gonna wrap up soon. Anything else you want to plug? Anything you got in the works you want to share with us?
That whole sound that you're talking about, the Connecticut Casual Chapter 2, is a movement that I'm doing right now with me and my homies, with Swavsky and with Little Vic, and it's
Yeah,
called Shore Life. And it's a little crew. It's like how Hieroglyphics was, how Griselda, you know, how Juice Crew, Wu Tang.
yeah.
We're solo artists, but we're doing the kind of sound. And I have so much more of that shit recorded, man. I got another album. The next album I'm gonna release is called Mom and Dad, and it's basically about the Reagan era, and it's about growing up in the '80s. But it's very similar to Connecticut Casual Chapter 2, with the vibey beats and the smooth stuff. And I feel like it's just my music keeps getting better, man. Absolutely better. I'm working on Swavsky's album. His album is very much in the same zone. Swavsky was on a lot of records with me. He was on How to Breathe Underwater, tons of different records. But
And
you know,
he's a great videographer too.
amazing videographer. You know,
Right.
we got the whole Shore Life Collective also is not just rappers. We're a crew of videographers. I got Jackson Wheeler. We got fucking photographers. We got everything, man. We got animators. So we're all building this huge movement behind the scenes right now. Shore Life.
That's dope. One last thing I was going to ask you: how would you say the Connecticut hip hop scene in general is between the artists and the clubs and the shows and everything? Would you describe that?
It's random. It's random. Everybody has been, you know, there's so many Connecticut artists I love, and I love Connecticut more than anything. You know, obviously I rep it. There's so many different guys. You know, there's different artists from, you know, Chris Webby to Sholey to Don ZOP to Marvelous to Show Rocker. There's so many different artists and amazing producers, but it's just I think everybody's on different pages, and Connecticut is such a disenfranchised state that it's not like we can all get together and kumbaya and fucking have a distinct sound. We're just worried about getting our own situations off the ground. So everybody here is trying and working really hard to get their own shit off the ground. So I don't think that there's ever been a uniformed theme or a sound ever at any point, and that's totally okay because everybody is their own entity. You know what I
Right.
mean? Everybody's their own artist, and all of these guys are just working like absolute animals and working their best to just get established in any way because we're swimming upstream. We're swimming against the current. It's hard to get on from Connecticut. So
Boston's very similar too. It's just a little bigger as far as
right.
population density, but there's a lot of that too.
Yeah, I can definitely I see it. You guys probably have historically a little bit better of a
Well, you
legacy.
guys like you guys are dispersed more all over the state, right? Like
Right,
in different
absolutely.
sections.
Yeah.
Boston a little more condensed than the Boston Metro, and there's a lot more people there, so more music gets out and spreads quicker. But
Right,
you know, it still struggles with those same things. You know, everybody's grinding to get on because there's no industry in Boston, so there's no
right.
labels really. So that's tough. You know, that's tough for
Absolutely.
any city.
Yep.
Word. Well, Apps, thanks, brother. Really
Yo, thank
appreciate
you,
your
man.
time.
Yo, first of all, I just want to say also too, I love you to death, man. You've been integral in my career, man. And
Yeah, we did great
doing
shows.
shows in the Middle East and doing shows up there is one of the highlights of my
Yeah.
career, man. So I can't thank you enough too, bro.
Thank you, brother. And well, thank everybody for tuning into the Leeds Edutainment Podcast with a very special guest, Apathy, brother. We'll talk soon.
Peace, much love. All right,
Take care.
Leeds.
Peace.
Peace.